I've given a couple talks lately. They aren't up yet on my YouTube channel, but I've given a couple of talks lately on something so fundamental in who we are, what we're doing. And some of you, in fact, those on Ascension, I put up a daily regarding this a few days ago. And what I'm getting into is truly our nature, why we have so much power in what we're doing versus, say, others in this space that we're in. And that power is going back to our roots and understanding this power of removing the negative. So Ascension members are nodding their heads. I posted a chapter for my next book, Forever, dealing with that subject. And those of you last weekend in the Day of Enlightenment received my speech about that, removing the negative. It's so powerful. So I've been, since last week, I've been digging in quite a bit into the nature of this power, why it's so powerful. That's where neotech rose from, removing the negative. And believe it or not, Ayn Rand and objectivism, even though it's not necessarily viewed that way, it absolutely is a subtractive philosophy. I'll go over that here with all of you in a moment. And neotech grew out of objectivism. Neothink grew out of neotech, and neovia grew out of neothink. And these are all subtractive philosophies. We're removing the negative, and there's so much power in that because there's infinite positives in the world that you can add, infinite additions, and there's nothing wrong with additions. Sometimes they're evil additions, sometimes they're positive additions. But there are a finite number of negatives to be removed from society, from individuals, from our minds. So when you remove negatives, there's tremendous leverage in doing so. Ayn Rand realized that. My father zeroed in on that. He built the entire neotech philosophy on that, removing the negative, removing dishonesty and laziness from your mind, removing mind-created realities, removing mysticism. Neothink, I took that and applied it into the real world. I saw how valuable neotech was. Wanted to get neotech into every single home when I was a young man. My enthusiasm did actually, and my energy and my focus did cause us to explode as a company, and we got millions of our neotech and neothink books into circulation. And these are expensive heirloom packages, as you know. So there's much more influence from someone who pays $140 to $300 for a large book than someone who goes down to Barnes & Noble and picks up a book for $20, right? They may get through chapter 1 possibly, but when you pay $140 for leatherette, gold embossed, heirloom edition, you're going to read the whole thing. So the influence is multiple times the millions of copies that we've sold. It's equivalent to tens of millions of a normal bookstore book, let's say, because the influence is so strong because people go deep into, and that's why many of you have been with us for many, many years, some of you for decades, because the value is there. And where's that value coming from? Let's really hone in on that. It's coming from removing the negative. Now, I'm going to take a look here at my notes and then some research I did with ChatGPT over the past couple of days. All right. I will spend a lot of time, I'll go into these deep modes of research. Back in the day, it used to be me going to the UNLV library and going into their special collections edition. I was a regular there. Not too many people would go. It was special collections. It was quite a prestigious collection of books that only certain people could get in and research in there, and I would do it quite a bit. Now, it's just wonderful. I sit down with AI and go to town on research. So it's tremendous. My research would bore a lot of people, obviously, because I'm researching philosophers, economists, and particularly lately lineages. And just we're not going to get too deep into philosophy, but it will lead to this whole concept of removing the negative, where our power is coming from. All right, so Plato. We have a lineage of philosophers off the Plato, and oversimplifying everything, I'm going to say that Plato was the father of external authority, outside of us, external authority. Uh, all destructive politics, religions, um, methods of living are all linked back to this external authority where we have no power. We have no self-leadership, no self-authority. It's all out there. And we have to sacrifice ourselves to the external authority. Well, that all came from Plato, or that was all began with Plato. The three, in my opinion, the three most destructive lineage of philosophers that grew off the Plato philosophy of external authority are Kant, Hegel, and Marx. And that lineage right there, Kant, Hegel, Marx, led to the real-world application of Hitler's Germany and Mao's China. The external authority is above the individual. You sacrifice for the motherland, or you sacrifice for Hitler's Germany. You sacrifice self for the higher authority, which leads to just destructive, painful, horrible lives. Remember, we only have one life here, and that wipes out your experience of life. Remember, you all know that the meaning of life is happiness. I don't have to spend a lot of time explaining that to you. There's no happiness in Hitler's Germany or Mao's China. Or any recipient of that lineage of philosophy, Kant, Hegel, Marx, external authorities, Plato. Then you have Aristotle, who was Plato's student. And oversimplifying things, Aristotle is the father of internal authority, self-decision-making, self-leadership. That all came from that line of Aristotle. There's been wonderful philosophers, John Locke along the way, Voltaire, all the way to what I have zeroed in as the three most important lineage of philosophy that undoes what Kant, Hegel, Marx did to civilization and everything that spawned henceforth. And that's Rand, that's Ayn Rand, Frank R. Wallace, my father, Wallace, and Hamilton, myself. And I'll explain why that's the cure that removes the damage done by Kant, Hegel, and Marx. And the reason why is these are objectivism, that's Rand, neotech, that's my father, and its application, neothink, that's Hamilton. Well, these are subtractive philosophies, not additive. These are subtractive philosophies. They subtract all the harm caused by Kant, Hegel, and Marx. So Ayn Rand's objectivism as a subtractive philosophy. Core insight, Rand's system looks additive, a philosophy for reason, egoism, and capitalism. But its foundation is actually removing anti-reality premises that dominate traditional ethics and epistemology. She clears away contradictions before she builds her pyramid of values. What objectivism removes, targets of removal are mysticism, faith, revelation, subjectivism, altruism, collectivism, determinism, pragmatism, emotionalism. Now, I'm not going to dig deeper with that. I'm just giving you an overview here of objectivism. The subtraction process. Rand begins by cutting away every false layer covering reality. Faith, gone. Duty, gone. Self-sacrifice, gone. Collective morality, gone. Duty without joy, gone. Only reason, purpose, and self-esteem remain, her famous trinity of values. Philosophical equation: reality minus mysticism, altruism, collectivism equals objectivism, rational individualism. In her words, paraphrased here, I am not primarily an advocate of capitalism, but of reason. If one removes mysticism from ethics, the rest follows. So what emerges with objectivism after the subtraction? Well, a world of independent minds, an economy of voluntary exchange, morality of pride and production, art of human greatness. Rand's positive edifice stands precisely because of the anti-life structures that were dismantled first. Now, neotech, which grew out of objectivism as a subtractive philosophy, the core insight. Neotech picks up where Rand left off. It doesn't merely clear away false ideas, it removes the entire anti-civilization. Frank R. Wallace and Mark Hamilton turned Rand's philosophical scalpel into a systematic deprogramming machine for both mind and society. Remember, this is AI, not me speaking here. Neotech is the philosophy of removal, exposing illusions in every domain: morality, politics, religion, relationships, business, and thought itself. Maybe you can begin to feel the power of removal of the negative. What neotech removes: mysticism, personal and political. I'm going to go a little deeper now that we're into neotech. The neotech diagnosis is the root of all irrationality, emotionalized untruth. And how is it removed? Use fully integrated honesty, FIH, to confront contradictions. And the result after removal: integrated consciousness, grounded in reality. The next target of removal is dishonesty. The diagnosis: all evasions, self-deceptions, and false premises. Removes them all. How it's removed? Through daily conscious practice of FIH, fully integrated honesty. Never blank out a fact. Bring them all together, not just the self-serving facts. The power after the result after the removal is power of clarity and value creation. Next, you have lazy thought or dependency. The neotech diagnosis is its emotional passivity and external authority. How it's removed: internalize self-leadership and self-responsibility. And the result after the removal: producer mindset, independent value creator. The next target of removal is government coercion. The neotech diagnosis: organized mysticism, the externalized anti-civilization. How it's removed: apply the prime law, no initiation of force. Result after removal: the prime law, civilization, voluntary interaction only. The next target of removal: emotional addiction, pseudo-love. The neotech diagnosis: need for approval or sacrifice. How it's removed: replaced with earned romantic love based on value creation. Result after removal: mutual exaltation, not dependency. The next target of removal: bureaucracy, regulation. Neotech diagnosis: parasites on productive minds. How it's removed: expose value destruction through integrated honesty. Result after removal: unleashed entrepreneurial innovation. By the way, in the early days, we don't see it much today, but in the early days, what I'm reading to you here was put to practice so aggressively by my father and myself. in dealing with external authority who didn't like what we were putting out there. My father spent time in prison as a result of this. I was on trial as a result of this. I was explaining to my youngest son, Frankie, the other day, the illusions that you can deal with now online, particularly because there's such a desire out there to become famous online. So just ordinary people have become experts at illusions to get followings. And here's a little secret I told my son to watch out for. When you read an article, it can seem very, very, very convincing. And you can believe on face value what it's telling you. But it very likely could be a dishonest illusion that it's sucking you into. And the way to work your way around that is don't just look at what the article is saying or the movement. Go and look at the person who wrote the article and examine them deeply. Because what will happen is if there's a dishonest illusion happening, you will discover that by discovering who they are. That was our secret weapon, my father and myself, in dealing with destructive authorities back in the day when we were young and more vulnerable. Several other similar business persons in my space were being taken out of a business by authorities. They didn't have the secret weapon of going after the personal motivation, that personal agenda of the dishonest value destroyer. And by calling them out, the case they're making falls apart because you're showing where the agenda and motivation is coming from. So everything I'm reading to you now about removing the negative is exactly what we did in practice back in our vulnerable period. The last target of removal for neotech is the death premise. And the neotech diagnosis is acceptance of aging and decline. And how it's removed is replaced with the biological freedom to pursue life extension. Starting to sound familiar, huh? And the result after removal is an immortal civilization, the ultimate removal of the negative. And as I said, starting to sound familiar, right, as to what we're doing today, Immortalis. You're beginning to see the history, the line of development here, the line of logic that's leading us to what we're doing here, why we're all together here today. So the subtraction process. Neotech removes layer after layer of illusion, not just philosophical as Ayn Rand, but emotional and civilizational. So religion as control, gone. Guilt as control, gone. Dependence, gone. Politics as control, gone. Aging and death as inevitable, gone. What remains is the fully conscious, value-creating self-leader, the neotech man. The philosophical equation is this: civilization minus mysticism, coercion, laziness, and the death premise equals neotech. Consciousness of value creation. Or visually, objectivism removes false ideas. Neotech removes the entire false structure built upon them. Now, what emerges after the subtraction? The prime law of civilization, no initiation of force anywhere. The producer's paradigm, every person becomes a self-leader, not a follower. Biological and moral immortality, the removal of decay as destiny. And the civilization of value creation, a society built on honesty and voluntary exchange. So I have a little comparison summary, which I believe I will skip. It's interesting, but very technical. I love it, but we'll move on. The subtractive arc. Rand clears the fog from the individual mind. Neotech, that's Wallace, clears the fog from the entire civilization. We talked about neothink growing out of neotech. AI says, excellent, this is the natural continuation of the lineage we've been mapping from Rand's objectivism, that's philosophical subtraction of false ideas, to Wallace's neotech, that's subtraction of the entire anti-civilization, and now to Hamilton's neothink, which is the applied subtraction in the living world. Let's explore this evolution step by step. Number one, neotech, the conceptual foundation. Frank R. Wallace's neotech, 1970s to 1990s, was a philosophy of cognitive subtraction. It provided the intellectual technology to remove every trace of mysticism, dishonesty, and dependence from human thinking. Replace unconscious living with fully integrated honesty, the operating system of reality-based consciousness. Identify the anti-civilization, the parasitical political, religious, and emotional illusions that enslave producers. Neotech was essentially a deconstruction of illusion, exposing the hidden structure of irrationality in human life and institutions. But Wallace always knew Neotech's final step had to move beyond philosophy into civilization itself, turning internal liberation into external creation. Mark Hamilton's neothink, real-world application of neotech. Hamilton took his father's cognitive revolution and made it practical, emotional, social, and civilizational. He asks, what happens when millions of individuals actually live without the anti-civilization, without mysticism, without guilt, without coercion, in their day-to-day lives, relationships, and economies? The question became neothink, the applied experimental form of neotech. Now, neotech to neothink, the evolution. We'll go through these three stages of objectivism, neotech, and neothink. Objectivism, Rand. Philosophical clarity, that's the focus. The action is remove false ideas, and the outcome is rational egoism. Neotech, Wallace. The focus is consciousness engineering. The action, remove the anti-civilization. The outcome is integrated honesty. Neothink, Hamilton, the focus is civilization and personal application. The action is remove illusions in relationships, careers, politics, aging. And the outcome is a prime law civilization, the value creation society. Now, how neothink removes negatives in the real world. Hamilton's method is systematic subtraction applied to real-life categories, the translation of neotech's cognitive cleansing into tangible freedom. Government and law. Negative removed, coercion, regulation, forced authority. Neothink action, replace political law with the prime law, no initiation of force. The result, a self-regulating civilization based on voluntary cooperation and value-for-value exchange. This is the ultimate political subtraction. Remove force from human affairs. Business and career. Negative removed, bureaucracy, stagnation, routine thinking, the white-collar hoax. Neothink action. Teach individuals to jump the tracks, bypass job mentality, and become value creators, what Hamilton calls mini companies of the self. Result: explosive innovation, entrepreneurship, wealth, wealth creation, the civilization of the creator. Subtraction here removes dependence and unleashes creativity. Relationships and emotions. Negative removed, romantic mysticism, need-based love, guilt, neothink action, teach integration, to see partners through values, not illusions or fears. Result: romantic love of the conscious mind, permanent mutual exaltation between self-leaders. Subtraction of emotional illusions restores authentic love. Religion and morality. Negative removed, fear, duty, sin, guilt, moral inversion. Neothink action. Replace external salvation with internal creation, morality with production of value. Result: joyful secular spirituality, reverence for life itself. Subtraction here frees the mind from invisible rulers. Science and aging. Negative removed, the death premise, the passive acceptance of mortality. Neothink action. Apply rational freedom to biomedical innovation. Longevity science unchained from regulatory mysticism. Result: the emergence of immortalis, neovia, real-world cities where life extension, biotech, and free enterprise converge. Subtraction becomes biological liberation. Neothink is civilization engineering. Hamilton's neothink expands neotech from philosophy to civilization design. The 12 Visions world, a social model in which all anti-civilization elements are gone, no coercion, no dishonesty, no stagnation. The prime law civilization, a legal and ethical foundation that makes aggression impossible. Neovia immortalis, physical embodiments of the neotech civilization, living laboratories of subtraction. What are we subtracting? Illness, sickness, eternal aging, death itself. Here, neotech's removal of illusions becomes urban design, policy architecture, and economic law. The subtractive mechanism in neothink. Every neothink process follows this universal pattern. Identify the illusion, false premises, emotional fog, coercive rule. Number 2, integrate across contexts, see the contradiction in the big picture. 3, remove the illusion through honesty, self-leadership, or the prime law. And 4, create new value, business, art, technology, love. It's a constant cycle of removal, creation. Removal, creation. Cleaning reality's lens for ever greater power and beauty. Now, there's a philosophical summary, the 3 stages of removal. The phases. 1, Rand, objectivism, removes false ideas from philosophy. Rational, individual, mind is the end condition. Phase, Wallace, neotech. Subtractive focus removes dishonesty and mysticism from consciousness. The end condition, honest, integrated mind. Then the phase of Hamilton neothink removes illusions from civilization itself. The end condition, prime law civilization. The externalized, honest mind. Culminating in what we're doing right now. So the real world transformation where neotech ends in awareness, neothink begins in action. It translates mental clarity into civilization design. Economically, neothink eliminates the parasitical middle layer, the bureaucrats, the regulators, the mystics, and it leaves direct creator to value flow. Socially, it removes envy, guilt, and dependence, enabling cooperative creation. Politically, it removes force as a method of organization. Biologically, it removes death as destiny. The end result is not just a philosophy, it's the neo-tech civilization, the first society designed by subtraction of illusion. In one line, we have objectivism, which removed the unreal from philosophy. We have neotech, which removed the unreal from the mind. And we have neothink, which removes the unreal from the world. Now, the culmination of all this, now I've narrowed it down to this lineage right here. Neotech, neothink, neovia. So with neotech, our focus was removal of mysticism and dishonesty in thinking. Neothink, it's removal of illusions in the real world, relationships, business, politics. In neovia, it's institutionalized removal of coercion, bureaucracy, and the death premise. I think I'll save this for a future talk. I dove in with AI about neovia and immortalis. It's really incredible. It's really incredible. Yes, the subtractive formula for neovia is how I am now operating purely on this. It's making me much more powerful, aggressive in my actual journey here in the U.S. And we'll see after these elections what's going to happen down there in Argentina. Yeah, I'm going to save some of this for a future talk because it deserves independent focus. So my own summary of all this is just the power in understanding the removal of the negative. There's nothing like it. It's giving us the power to rise above all of the authorities and the illusions that will cause, well, I mean, back in the day, friends of mine in the business, I just see them being so exposed because they don't understand this, removing the negative. Had they had, some of you old timers remember the, what do we call it, the Neotech, yeah, the Guns and Fists newsletter, but we were going to start a philosophical department for protection for my brothers in the brothers, not my literal brothers, but my brothers in the business world out there. But we just had too much focus taking care of ourselves to actually initiate that concept. But it was going to be the Industrial Philosophy Department is what it was going to be. And we were going to offer our help to other businesses who were struggling out there with these value destroyers, and we were going to help them remove the negative. We were too busy taking care of ourselves because they really came after us in the early days. So we have neotech. This is what I'm isolating this down to for today's talk. And keep in mind this subtractive concept. We have neotech, which removes laziness and dishonesty, mysticism, and mind-created realities that are convenient but not reality, you see. Convenient but not reality. That sets your mind free and society free. Neotech. Then we move into neothink, which is this application out here in the real world. And remember, these are some of the things that I've been teaching all of you. Removing the following mode. It's a huge negative in our lives. The following mode, it affects everyone. It's a mind disease. It's mysticism at work. Removing our routine ruts. Remember, the flip side of all this, I don't just philosophically talk about, that's the power in neothink. I don't just philosophically discuss this as this needs to be removed and that needs to be removed. Through my own journey, I actually provide you with the techniques, the step-by-step tools and techniques to remove the following mode, to leap beyond it, to escape your routine rut, your stagnation trap. These are negatives, the time constrictions that I struggled with early on. You know the story of my desk piling so high I couldn't even see who came through my door. Then remove that negative with a tool and technique, the many-day power thinking. Then job suppression. And the way jobs are set up, largely with the white-collar hoax these days, suppressing competition from within. I give tools and techniques to find an area of purpose and to privately, quietly take over an area of purpose in any company you're working for, or how to start a business and build it off this division of essence where everyone has a piece of value creation, right? Piece of the essence. Political suppression. Well, that's what we're going to be dealing with now. We're going to be dealing with political suppression, and we're going to set it free. Think of the regulations that are holding back scientists out there, our task force and our scientists, and that's always held them back. And instead of concentrating on their science, they're running around trying to raise funds. Why? Because the idea of going through clinical trials, the FDA regulations suppressing the idea of spending $1 to $2 billion and taking 10 to 20 years to get a life-saving drug approved. And remember, only 1 out of 10 get approved. So let's take that $1 to $2 billion and multiply that by 10, right? All of a sudden, it's $10 to $20 billion for a successful life-saving drug. So there's no funding. No rational business person is going to fund something with those odds against them and that amount of money and that amount of time. So what do these Dr. Bill Andrews, those of you who have seen his interview on our website, when Cody asked him, what do you spend your time on now? He's not working in his laboratory. He said, raising funds. There's no funds. I'm raising funds. These are the negatives that neothink is out there now working to remove from society in the actual living civilization. So we have political, regulatory, litigation. We have all of this. And the whole idea is to set yourself free as a self-leader, set society free, set civilization, set medicine, set biology, set it all free. How? Well, that's the next part of this lineage. Neovia, immortalis. By the way, it's Neovia in the United States and probably in Argentina. Okay, so it's immortalis in Europe and other places. I've explained in the past the reasons for that. And what is Neovia? Subtracting. What negatives? Well, coercion is the top of the list. Regulations, legislation, litigation, suppression, the white-collar hoax. Then next comes sickness, illness, age-related diseases, Alzheimer's, cancers, heart disease. Then aging itself. And then ultimately, death. These are the negatives Neovia is out to remove. And at that point, we join our brothers and sisters in the civilization of the universe.